Joining me now, Joseph Humire, a counterterrorism expert and the executive director of the Center for a Secure Free Society. Joseph, General Suleimani was a popular and charismatic person, well liked in his country. How big of a blow is this for Iran?
This is a tremendous blow to Iran because, as you mentioned, he's a very important figure in the hierarchy of Iran that exceeds just the Quds Force of Iran, which he was directly in charge of. And the reason for that is because one of the mandates of Iran since the dawn of the revolution in '79 is to export the revolution worldwide. And the individual that's been exporting this revolution worldwide for the last 20 years is General Qasem Soleimani. He was active in Syria, in Yemen, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Africa, in Latin America, even with cells inside the United States. So he is one of the major supporters of international terrorism worldwide. And I think that this has caught Iran by surprise, and by extension is going to provoke a reaction from Iran in sometime in the future.
Joseph, as I was explaining at the beginning of the show, a U.S. contractor was killed last Friday. That led to a series of events. And now the United States uses a drone attack to kill a top Iranian commander. Was that too much of an escalation?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, one of the things we've learned over the last 40 years is that whether you provoke or don't provoke, attack or don't attack Iran, they're going to attack you. And that's a hard fact that we learned when dealing with the Ayatollah since 1979. And so what we've seen just in the last year, in 2018, you've seen 19 acts of aggression against either U.S. forces, U.S. interests, or U.S. allies in the Middle East, whether that's petroleum ships in the Strait of Hormuz or American drones operating in Iraq. They've been taking the fight to the United States for many months, especially in 2019. So I think this was a response, and a clear red line that I think President Trump is drawing is that if you kill Americans, then Iranian forces will be killed as well.
The Trump administration, now that you mentioned the president, said that by killing Soleimani, they stopped plans to attack American diplomats and service members. The general was a major threat. Are we better off now that he's dead?
Well, definitely, I think we're in basically debilitating this international terror network worldwide. Qasem Soleimani had proxy forces that stretched from the Western Hemisphere to the Middle East to Africa to Europe and Asia. So he had a global presence because of his ability to compartmentalize his networks. So I think we're better off, but nonetheless, we have to be prepared. I know many people are worried that this could escalate to a direct conflict with Iran or potentially even a world war. The best way to prevent a war is to be prepared for war. And I think that this shows that we are prepared for any aggression that Iran may continue to take and that there will be consequences. The United States is not looking for any kind of war with Iran, but Iran has to understand that they cannot provoke the United States into a conflict.
And Joseph, now that you mention war, the president has been very aggressive with Iran, pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal and imposing serious economic sanctions. Now Iran is promising revenge. What type of revenge? Cyber warfare, proxy wars? What are we looking at?
That's a great question, because I think that's the question on the minds of many, including those within the intelligence community as well as just the general public. I think there's two tracks that they can take in terms of the response. One would be a conventional response, which is something they do all the time, which is a proxy attack from somewhere in the Middle East. Obviously, Iraq would be the most likely target. I think they have a Shia community there that they've penetrated that they can use to uprise against U.S. Presence and interest in the region. But I think an unconventional method would be to attack us outside the Middle East, whether that be in Africa, Latin America, or even within the United States. It's important to note that the IRGC-QF, the Quds Force of Iran, has that capability. So we have to be prepared for that scenario as well.
And as we move forward, do we have any allies? Because in Israel, Netanyahu is seeking immunity for corruption charges. Trump doesn't really have a very warm relationship with our allies in Europe. Where does that leave the United States?
I think this is the kind of action that could solidify more allies, because what people don't understand is Qasem Soleimani wasn't as popular as he projected himself to be. It's much like Putin in Russia. Putin has this great image of power and strength, but when you take away the facade, he's really a corrupt person that violates human rights. And I think in Syria, in Iraq, in Jordan, some of the Arab community is going to look at this as a sign of strength. And that's one sign that they look for in their alliance with the United States. So I think this is the kind of action that people have criticized Trump in the past for not being strong enough with Iran when they were attacking us in the Middle East, that this could kind of solidify some of the alliances that we've been building over time.
Well, thank you so much, Joseph Humire, for your perspective and your input during this time of crisis.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invitation.